CRC's Open Educational Resources Award Program, we were the first college in the district to come up with this idea and to start this program. I can tell you that ARC has initiated a similar project, and I learned today that Sac City just launched a similar project as well. So we were the leaders in this, and will be a model, I'm sure, for the other colleges. Why OER? Why Open Educational Resources? I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this, but it was easiest for me just to capture it in a video. So we're going to start with this.
Equity in education, anti-racism practices, creating inclusive learning spaces. It's a heavy lift, and faculty sometimes wonder, how can one person really make a difference? There is one thing we can do right now that will impact every single CRC student. Lower or eliminate costs for textbooks and learning materials. More than 50% of CRC students live in poverty or low income. 5 in 10 students. Think back to March 2020, when we moved our classrooms to our living rooms. Most of us were forced to buy at least one high-ticket item to make it work. How frustrating, spending all that cash just so we could do our jobs. Now think of our students. Every semester, many of them facing a much more difficult choice. Buying a textbook or buying groceries for the week. Buying a textbook or paying for childcare. Buying a textbook or making a car payment. And guess what? They often skip the textbook. So what can one person do? Adopt and use open educational resources. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create lasting systemic change that will impact every current CRC student and generations of students to come. Our goal is to become a zero textbook cost campus. Are you ready to make the change? Join the CRC OER Crusade. Equity in education. Anti-racism, equity in education, anti-racism practices.
All right, so you saw it in the video. It is an ambitious goal, 100% zero textbook costs, and the timeline on this is very tight. We're looking to do this by fall 2022. And one of the reasons the timeline is so tight is that we are utilizing the federal COVID relief funds, and there are some deadlines on when that money needs to be spent. So that's why the timeline on this project is so tight. Let's look a little bit closer at our students. You saw in the video that about 50% of our students are living below poverty or in low income. And when you look at statistics over the last several semesters, that number has remained consistent over time. And there are also other things that our students are dealing with, such as food insecurity. So the Hawkspot, our food pantry, they started doing services in fall of 2019. And that first semester, about 4.3% or more than 620 students utilized that service. And then in spring 2020, remember, that's when we shut down in March of 2020. So in that short time that we had been open, already 360 students had utilized that service. And then last semester, things were able to start up again, even though the campus itself was virtually closed, but to very few students who were taking classes in person. And for the few student services that were available by appointment, we still had 6.5% of our students utilizing the monthly drive-up service and 5% of our students using the walk-up service, and that was about 400 students. So our students are dealing with lots of things in socioeconomic situations. Now let's look at the cost of textbooks. So the research office helped me come up with these numbers. And what they did is they looked at the textbook list and looked at all of the courses and what was being required. And they figured out kind of the average cost of a textbook. And it fluctuates just a little bit depending on how many units a student is taking. So if a student is taking 15 units, they're paying more than $450 on average for a semester. And remember, if a student is in the STEM field, that number is likely going to be higher. So this is an average cost. Now, the good news is that many of our faculty have already adopted zero textbook costs material so that they do not require their students to purchase a textbook. So about 37% of our students are enrolled in at least one ZTC course. And you can see that that really brings the cost of textbooks down from $234 for 12 units to $264 for 15 units. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, geez, even the highest number on this page, $456, that doesn't really seem like that much. But when you look at the federal poverty guidelines for 2021, for a family of four, that's just a little more than $2,000 a month. And so when you're thinking about stretching that $2,000 to support your family and then also spending even the lowest number, $234 on your textbooks, that can be a big ask for our students. Now, I can tell you students are very frustrated about the costs of textbooks. They're not only frustrated about the cost of textbooks, but they're also frustrated about the way that we communicate textbook information to them. I hear from a lot of students, and even my work in the library, I would hear from students all the time that they purchased a very expensive textbook and then hardly ever used it, or they purchased something and it actually was the wrong textbook. So they have a lot to say about this. And this is a short video where I utilized some quotes that were received through a survey that the research office did a few semesters ago. I'm not going to play this video today, but these slides will be available to you. And this is actually on the library's YouTube channel, so you can watch it. And I can tell you that tomorrow during convocation, we are going to show a video and you'll hear from actual students where they have lots of interesting and important things to say about the costs of textbooks. So meeting this goal by fall of 2022, I know when we say we're trying to do this in this very short timeline, I suspect, because this was my reaction, is that it can't be done. It's impossible. There's no way we can do this. And I know it's easy to be paralyzed by that is something that seems so big and daunting. And I know how hard this work is because I've done this work. I created a 3-unit course from scratch for the library, and we did not have a textbook. It wasn't being taught anywhere in the district or in the state. And so I did have to start from scratch. And that included creating a textbook for that cost or for that course. And so I know how hard this work is, and I know how much time it takes. But instead of looking at that overall goal, which can be very paralyzing, if we take this in small actionable steps and do a little something every day, it's much more manageable. And so I will challenge you, we're in the start of a new year. So if you're into New Year's resolutions or intentions, that you might think about, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day, each work day, during my morning coffee or tea, working on this. So you'll start out with doing some research, and then you might see how you can convert something that's commercial and pull in something that's an open educational resource, or how you might work your assignment so they can work with a new textbook, and just take those small steps every day. Take advantage of the support that is available to you. I'm on release time, and I just realized that I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning. So if you don't know me, my name's Andy Atkins Pogue. I'm a librarian, but I'm working on this project full time for the academic year. I'm working outside of the library, and my focus this year is to help support faculty for this project. We've also hired 3 OER specialists who start next week, and they're going to be supporting faculty. And I also have many librarians who are interested in participating, and they're helping with some of the research aspects of this, helping faculty find starting points where they can, so it's not so daunting. And then the last thing I'll say is don't duplicate efforts. If you're in a department where several faculty are teaching the same course, work on this together. So maybe you're only responsible for one unit or one chapter, or you are going to work on PowerPoints and someone else is going to work on the textbook. Or if you're teaching a class where several other faculty are also teaching that class, but you have one or two preps where you're the only person teaching those classes, you let your colleagues work on this other class while you focus on the courses in which you're the only person teaching those classes. So don't duplicate efforts and collaborate. I get a lot of questions about the difference between OER and ZTC. So it's called the OER Award Program. And we've been in this about a semester, and now I kind of wish I would have named it something else, but it was such a quick kind of jump into this that I grabbed names that other colleges had used. So an open educational resource means that it's open and free, and anyone can access the material for free, including you and your students. Now, often these will have a Creative Commons license that will allow you to edit the material or remix the material or rework the material. So if let's say you're teaching an introductory to business course and you have a unit on diversity, you might actually pull a chapter from a sociology OER for that particular portion. And maybe you pull something from an economics textbook or a statistics textbook for when you're talking about working numbers within a business. You might be pulling resources from lots of different areas to create the material for your course. So all OER are zero textbook costs. In order to get the zero textbook cost symbol and that ZTC designation in the class schedule, that means that your students are not being asked to pay any additional fees for the learning materials for that course, but they're not necessarily open or free. So an example of something that's open but has some restrictions are maybe a TED Talk or a YouTube video. So you can freely access these, you can embed them into your course, but you can't really edit them or adjust them. That would be something that's open. Now, things that aren't necessarily free, these would be things that you're accessing through the library databases. So it might be a New York Times article that you got through our US Major Dailies databases, or an ebook, or a streaming video that we have access to through the college library. And these are copyrighted, licensed materials that the library has purchased a license so that they can be available to currently enrolled students. So often when you're creating a ZTC course, you're going to use a combination of these things, OER and some other material that isn't necessarily open, but is freely available to our students. Our OER award program is a $5,000 award for full-time faculty. So 1.0 load, you're eligible to earn $5,000. And this is the highest amount that we've ever been able to offer for this work, because we know how much work it is. All faculty are eligible to participate, full-time and adjunct. Adjunct compensation is going to be based on your FTE load for fall of 2021 and spring of 2022. And we updated the website late last semester that has all of the details on how you can calculate how much you're eligible to earn. There are 3 categories. So again, everybody is eligible to participate in this. So you might be in the first category where you're starting from scratch, you're using commercial textbooks, and you have to do a lot of work to convert everything. The second category are people who maybe have already started the work, but really things need some refreshing or some updating. You need to make sure that your examples are more culturally relevant, or you need to make sure that your material is fully accessible. That would be category 2. And category 3 is for people who've already converted all of their courses. There's no other work that needs to be done, and they sign on to support their peers and other faculty in creating their material. This third category might also include counselors and librarians who are helping to support their colleagues to do this work. And the commitment is that you commit to teaching all of your courses fall 2022 using your newly adopted or revised OER and ZTC material in all assigned sections. There is a very short application, and there's a lot of details on the college website. I'll put a link to this in chat in just a minute. Once you get onto this webpage, there's a link to several FAQs. So every time I get multiple people asking me the same question, I'll put it in our FAQs. So there's a lot of information there. And as you scroll down on this website, towards the bottom is where a lot of the new information has been published, and the eligibility and the requirements and how funds are going to be dispersed. Then there is a very short application. Part of the requirements are that you enroll in a Canvas course that talks more about OER. And then we have lots of professional development opportunities. So I have office hours once a week, and then Jenna Trench is helping me to do events. Usually they're on Fridays. They're not every Friday. There's a few Fridays that are skipped, but this is lots of different ways to integrate your OER into your Canvas courses. And we started this last semester. All of those were recorded, and there's a module in that Canvas course for professional development that has all of those recordings. So don't freak out if you missed something that you wanted to see. Okay, that's the end of my official presentation. So I'm gonna stop my share, and then I'm gonna go through the chat because I wasn't really looking at it. I see Barbara, I misspoke. You did tell me 1,000, I apologize. Yes, it's more than 1,000 colleges and universities are using her textbooks. And Hiram, your question about fall of 2022, yes, the goal is to have, when students look at our class schedule, that they would see that ZTC symbol on every single course, so they would know that they aren't required to purchase any textbooks. That's the goal. Now, let's see, Iris, will the library be working with other faculty to find suitable, well-vetted OER materials for the classes, and will faculty have the option not to adopt if they wish? So yes, the library is actively working on doing some of that research. I have librarians who have signed up, and so there's kind of, I think ECE, we've already shared the template with you that lists other OER that are being used at other colleges and at our college, and then places where you can look to try to find more resources. And then we also have situations where there's just simply not an OER option. So it might be a novel or a popular nonfiction that's being used for a course that there is no OER available. In those cases, we're looking to see if we can purchase ebook licenses, and those are would be available through the library. So there's a form that you fill out if there's something that's impossible to convert, so that we can get that information and start doing the research. And will faculty have the option not to adopt if they wish? Yes, this is not a mandate. This is not, you're not going to be forced to do anything that you don't want to do. But I will tell you, if you are teaching a course and you are the only section that is requiring your students to purchase a textbook, your section is likely going to be the last section to fill, because students are paying attention to this and the word is getting out. And I can tell you that if a student has the option of taking a course where they have to buy a $200 textbook or they have free access to the material, I don't know, which one would you choose? So I'll just put that out there. Okay, so that's the last question that I have in chat. Dr. Bush or Barbara, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we open it up to questions?
Sure. I really just want to start by everyone giving Andy a huge round of applause. I mean, I think it's clearly evident why she is the one leading this effort. I mean, she was actively and engaged and involved in this work long before the idea of our institution being a zero textbook college. So Andy, we appreciate the expertise, passion, and dedication and competency that you bring into this work, and is evident, and we are in good hands. And we're going to get across this finish line and hit this goal because of your effort. And I appreciate that. You know, you only really have yourselves to blame while we are engaged in this work, to be honest. Because the abnormal nature of CRC, you have really set the conditions to even make this possible. If you wasn't so darn innovative, if you haven't already proven to be so equity minded, if you weren't already putting students at the center of your work, there's no way the conditions have been ripe enough to put this forward. And because you have already leaned so heavily in making sure that we reduce barriers for students to gain access to our institution, because you already made it a priority to ensure that our students have equal opportunities to be successful, has created the conditions for us to do this type of work. And you have made it possible for me as a leader to dream, because I believe that the dreams can come true based on who our faculty are and what you have done and accomplished at this particular point in time. So I'm just in awe, always constantly proud and bragging about you and what it is that we're doing as an institution and what you're being able to do as a faculty. And so just imagine, right, what it is that we're really trying to do. And I think the video said it, that when our students come in, they're not having to make the difficult choices whether or not to have the tools necessary to be successful or to put food on the table. Or they don't have to panic because their financial aid check is coming a week after the start of the semester and they don't know how they're gonna get access to their books. We are eliminating that scenario. And it's not lost on me. The student activist, the agitator part of who I am, is also excited to stick it to the man, so to speak, with these publishing companies that we've been trying to figure out for years, right? How to get these publishers to reduce the cost, quit gouging our students, quit operating as a monopoly. And we haven't figured out how to deliver a blow to them. And so this is the first time that I think we really have a systemic opportunity to undercut the greed, I'm gonna be frank, that I think exists within these publishing companies. And we send a message not only for us, but can send a message across the country about what it is possible to be able to break that pattern and that cycle that exists for our students. And so I'm excited. We are 100% in as administrative team to this effort. We are all in. You're not in it by yourself. So if there's something you need, if there's additional resources, and I told Andy and Barbara this, we're going to find a way to make it happen. The stipend is just to create an incentive to acknowledge the amount of work that has been done already, that we're going to do moving forward. But that's not the extent in which the resources that we are willing to put into this effort. So you're not in this alone. You're not left to your own devices. We're going to provide the personnel and the resources necessary to surround you to make this a reality and possible for you to convert your courses. If we're able to do this, y'all, man, just imagine when we go out and talk to our high school students, when we engage adults who are looking to re-enter into the educational system and complete their degrees, and we're able to tell them, you do not have to worry about the cost of your books. Just show up and be ready to learn, and we got you. Oh, man, it's hard to imagine what that would do for potential students who want to continue their education. And of course, the impact that is going to have on our current students. So I'm excited. I have no doubt that we're going to pull this off, and that we'll be able to say shortly that we are a zero cost textbook institution. Y'all just be prepared for your interviews, be prepared for going around to other colleges, people calling you, emailing you, asking you how we were able to pull this off. and how well the conversion is doing, because it's going to happen. And once again, CRC is going to stand out as being the big beacon of equity and what it means to put our students at the center of our work. So thank you all for your efforts.
I am in awe of how much has already been done by Andy and her team who she works with. You are so fortunate and that you are off to a great start. I'm really honored that Doctors Bush and Tina have contacted me to have me work with you. This is so much fun because there's already a lot of buy-in, and how I got involved with this almost 20 years ago was we weren't using the word equity at that point. We were using diversity and multiculturalism, but the grade gap between financially secure students and the students who are not secure, that grade gap was huge. And I thought about in my class, what can I do as a person that makes a really big difference? And teaching mathematics, I realized that the one thing that would make a difference is if on day one of the class, the first day of the class, every single student came in there on equal footing by having all the resources he or she needed to, or they needed to work and succeed in this class and not wait for financial aid to come in 2 weeks later. I also found that switching to OER was a huge boost to academic freedom because I could customize what I wanted. And I think that often the complaint I hear from faculty working around the country with faculty, not so much now, but in the previous 10 years, was I have my academic freedom to choose the book that I think is the best for my students. And I totally agree with you. We know that that's a very best book is subjective. We also have reports that have been done several times and have reiterated that and have verified, around the country that approximately 2/3 of the students don't buy the textbook. And so when I'm talking about what's the best textbook for the class, it's the one that my students can have and can get. And I'm a professional. I taught for over 30 years at De Anza, and I'm a professional, so I should be able to supplement what's missing from any open textbook or any material to work with my colleagues so that they can have this experience. And if I really believe in student equity, then I believe that students should have access to the materials. And so that's what got me interested in. I was very fortunate that my colleague Susan Dean and I wrote we're told that it is the first open textbook in the country that was ADA compliant, accessible for blind and deaf students. And we were very lucky because Rice University picked it up and used it as their guinea pig to experiment on how to make things accessible in the math world. And then it became the prototype for OpenStax. I wanted to say one other thing, and that is what the second biggest question I get always is, what about articulation? For my class, my students are transferring to CSU or UC, and what about articulation? So just to let you know, CSU has its own, they call it textbook affordability progress project, and they are the #2 users, CSU, in the country of OpenStax. So if you're fortunate enough to have that, you don't have to worry anything. But if you're not fortunate enough, I worked with the articulation officer at the CSU system in UC, and we have in the articulation agreements, which is what the counselors do to guarantee transfer of your course, there is a place to put the URL for the OER. So articulation is not an issue, just so you're aware of that. And most of you, I think, will be using open textbooks that are being used at other places. So that's the easiest way to start, is to find out what's being used at my community colleges, what's being used at CSU, what's being used at UC, what's being used at University of Maryland. I mean, once University of Maryland adopted the introductory statistics book that I co-authored for their entire introductory statistics courses. And this was over 10 years ago. Once they adopted it, I no longer got the questions about, well, is your book legitimate? Is it good enough? Because if a whole university system adopts it, then I know that it's got to be good enough. And when the CSU system is using it, then I know it's good enough. And when you look through the books, you may find a lot of the books are co-authored by community college and CSU and university faculty. And I just want to encourage you. I'm so glad to be here to be able to assist, and I'm open for you to help you, especially those of you who are on STEM disciplines. I've done, all of math has all of the textbooks except for one, I think, are there's a textbook that's using open textbook and an open software homework rating system. So you don't need to use the ones that are My Blank Lab. We have that, and it's accessible. And for some of the other disciplines, that's the same way. So I'm here also to assist Andy, Dr. Tina, Dr. Bush, and their needs. And thank you.
Okay, so Jacob asked a question: what percentage of our faculty have already committed to participate? I have the list of people who have filled out the application, but I'll need to check again with Robert's office to see how many full-time faculty and how many part-time faculty we have currently working to be able to give you an accurate percentage. I can tell you that more adjunct faculty have signed up at this point than full-time faculty. But I can also tell you that I think there's a little bit of confusion. People who have already converted their courses or who have already done some work were under the impression that they were not eligible to participate, and that is not the case. So if you've already done work to convert your courses, you are still eligible to participate. And part of that is knowing that you have already done much of this work and you didn't get compensated for it. So we're trying to make up for that. But also, if you're in counseling or a librarian and you're not in a classroom for your 1.0 load, but for counseling, Brandy Jones Thomas is trying to convert all of those courses by herself. So she could really use some help. And then other faculty who are non-classroom faculty, like librarians, are helping to support in the research aspect of it. So I'm hoping that as that message gets out, and I encourage you to share that with your colleagues, that more people will sign up. As far as a deadline to apply, right now, tentatively, I believe the last thing I talked about with Robert and Dr. Bush was at the end of maybe mid-February, where we were going to close down the application, because then we would really start running out of time. But there is a possibility, we just don't know, that the deadline to spend this money might get pushed out, in which case we could potentially allow that application to be open longer. Let's see. All right, and then Barbara posed a question to all of our faculty who are here, because I know I've heard from certain faculty who just flat out believe that there is nothing good enough for my course that is as good as a commercial textbook. So I would really love to hear from some of you to answer that question. And then I also hear from many faculty who say, yeah, I'm using this commercial textbook, but there are so many problems with it that I wish I could change. And when you're using OER, you can make those changes. You can change examples, you can change the order of things, you can move things around, you can pull whole sections out if you don't want it. that's all an option when you're doing this type of work. And I see Min has her hand up, so go ahead and ask your question, Min.
Yes, I first of all, I don't know what my fall schedule will be, and at this point. So, and also I have a question about that the participants requirement here. One of them is this that, so it says in 4/2022, we need to commit to use all the, their own text cost book, which is fine. But in order to accomplish that, we have to, search or adapt, some open resources books for the fall 22. But my question is that I look at the participation requirements, and one says that you have to, it says, okay, successfully produce deliverable agreed upon during that application process, and those material, right, to be adapted for 2022 semester. But also another one says teach the course or courses using newly adapted, created, revised OER in all assigned sections for the 22-23 academic year. But then, so what I teach in 4/22 may not be the same the course I'll be assigned in spring 23. So so how do so does that mean that I have to, if it's a course that I will be teaching in spring 23, which is not the same as I taught in 4/22. So does that mean I have to find material during the winter break or something for that course in spring 23? And also it says commit to requiring only free course materials for at least the next 5 academic years through 2027. So for that, for beyond 4/22, for all those courses, first of all, I don't know what I will be assigned to teach. And secondly, and for those courses, I may not have researched and done the work for them. So, so what do I do about those courses? Do I have to continue to search and for them, or can I just adapt to some the OER that other people have created?
Okay, I'm gonna try to go through and answer all of your questions. So yes, it's quite possible that you have no idea what you're going to be teaching in the fall. The goal is to anything that you are regularly assigned to teach, we're asking that you convert all of your materials. Now, if for some reason something strange happened in the fall and you're asked to teach a course that you have never taught before and you have never been asked to teach, and all of a sudden you're being asked to teach and you did not know about it when you signed up for the program, and you feel like there are no resources that your colleagues who have taught the course in the past and are a ZTC, you feel like you couldn't use those materials and you absolutely must require your students to purchase a textbook. If all of that were true, then you would require a textbook. There's not a situation where President Bush is going to knock on your door and say, remember that $5,000 I paid you? It's time to pay some of it back because you didn't follow through. That is not going to happen. And this becomes especially difficult for our adjunct faculty because they're being asked to produce material for fall 2022, but they may have no idea what they are teaching in fall 2022. So we know all of those things are in play. We're asking, and that again is where the collaboration among your peers is going to be important, that you actually communicate with people within your department so you know who's teaching what and what they're working on, so that if you are put in a situation, I mean, to me, this seems like the best situation. If you get told 2 weeks before school starts that you're teaching a course and somebody has left, but they have already adopted all of this OER and you have access to it, to me, that would be the ideal situation, because now you have all of their material and you can decide whether you utilize it or not, or change it or not. Whereas if it's a commercial textbook, you take what you get, and maybe as you get into a unit and you realize, oh my gosh, I cannot believe the examples that are being used here. This is not relevant to our student body. This is going to turn people off, or this is may have been correct when the textbook was written, but now it is not. All of those situations can be corrected when you're using an open educational resource. The commitment to use something over a long time period, the 5 years out. So we're not saying that, again, this is kind of the beauty of OER. We're not saying that once you create this, you have to use this for the next 5 years. Really, the idea is once you've converted your class and you are offering a ZTC course and you see how much it benefits your students and how glorious it is to not have 15 students email you the last day of the first week because you're doing a quiz and they don't have the textbook and they have no idea how to study for it, that you will see the value in this and you will commit to continue to do the work to offer ZTC courses, and however you do to do that work, maybe OER, maybe a combination of library materials and some other open resources. I think there may have been one other question in there, but Min, did I capture everything?
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. I mean, I think it's just the long-term commitment. I'm just saying because I have no idea what I will be teaching for that next 5 years. You know what I mean? So it may not be the course I have developed, material OER for. So for those courses, I just wonder whether we can just adopt other people's OER. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. You can
Yeah.
adopt other
Well,
people's
yeah.
OER.
Okay, yeah. That answers it. Thank you.
At one point I saw Julie's hand up, but now I don't see her anymore. So
I was just going to highlight the idea of departments really communicating and working together. So look at all your course offerings, divide it up, figure out who can put together what, pull your adjuncts in to work with you, and make it more of a department effort. Because I completely understand what Min's saying. A lot of us in departments with lots of different courses don't know what we're teaching and couldn't possibly commit to 2027 or whatever it is of our own doing. But if the whole department worked together and made a big effort to get as much as possible done and all the OER shells or formatting done, then it could be shared a little more readily.
yes, and so I can give you a couple examples of this. I know the English department, they have created a development shell, a Canvas shell for each one of the courses in their series. And people who are interested in, who have signed up and are participating, they're being loaded into that Canvas shell and they're working together just to kind of load all of their resources. And so then people can go in and decide, okay, well, I really like this assignment and I'm going to use it, so I'm going to pull this into my course, or I really like the textbook that somebody has written and I like this chapter, so I'm going to pull it in for that portion of it. That is one, I think, innovative and great way to collaborate within a department. And then another thing that I'm going to be working on with the OER specialists, and this was a suggestion from Barbara, so I'm going to be working on this at the beginning of the semester, is we're going to create Canvas shells that pull in all of the available textbooks that are available through OpenStax, so that you could, if let's say you're teaching that statistics course, we would have the Canvas shell with the CRC branding already in place. You could pull that whole textbook Canvas shell into your course and then kind of do the editing, just pick and choose what you're going to do and what portions you want to keep and what portions you want to get rid of. And that work is going to be happening towards the beginning of this semester, and I'll release more information about that as we go along. Jerry, did you
Yes, I do. I have started teaching, or I am scheduled to teach an art studio class. Technically, it's a zero text cost course already. However, I was looking at characteristically what the materials list is, and I know that there's room for improvement there, because it was $400 to get the necessary supplies to begin with. So I've worked on cutting them down. I don't know, because being a course that already has a zero textbook, if my work doing that sort of thing, I've been scanning material from other sources and creating links and doing that sort of thing to load into my Canvas shell for the particular class. But do we have resources for that, first of all? And second of all, I would just like to converse with someone as to how I can access that, because even if I'm not getting paid because I don't meet the metric for success here, I would really like to make a difference for these students who are below poverty income or financially strapped to be able to be a part of the arts.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. So the state's definition of zero textbook cost really only covers what they're talking about is books, basically books and like homework systems. But there are many, so technically, yes, your course would be considered ZTC. But if you are asking your students to buy paints and pastels and other things that aren't textbooks, but are still very, very expensive, even though your course is ZTC, there is still an expense involved. So that is something that we've talked about in the Affordable Educational Resources Committee. And it is not something that I brought up with administration yet, but I can put it on my list of things to discuss with them on whether we might want to put some of the money aside so that we can fund those types of things that aren't under that traditional textbook label, but are still a cost to students. And so that we're also talking like lab coats and goggles and those kinds of things in the sciences. Those aren't textbooks, but it's required that students purchase them, and there is a cost involved in that. So that is on my radar, and I don't have a solution at this particular meeting, but it is something that I will talk more with administration about.
Well, and it's not there cannot be a complete solution to that. I mean, they do need some materials, but I've been doing a lot of research, and we don't need the materials that are technically, if you label something an art supply, you quadruple the cost of it. So I've been doing a lot of research in terms of how I can reduce those costs. I know that I can't eliminate them, and I don't know if that qualifies for this particular program or not. That's all.
Yeah, you are still eligible to participate. So if you, let's say you in the past have required your students to purchase like a fundamentals of drawing textbook where they learn about shading and the color wheel and I don't know, whatever else. It's been years since I took an art course. If you instead choose to utilize resources that are freely available and don't require them to purchase a textbook and do the work to convert your class in that way, you would qualify for the program, knowing that unfortunately your students are still going to face some costs in taking the course because there are some costs associated with supplies. Barbara, do you want to comment on this?
I want to just reply to Jerry as well, and that if we can eliminate textbooks, that's a huge bonus. But we do know there are other things that students need. They go to a math class. Most math classes require a calculator. Chemistry, they need to get goggles and a lab book. Art, one of my daughters majored in video film editing. That was a lot of supplies. But what I've never heard is I've never heard a student say, I'm so upset you eliminated my book and materials cost from 1,000 to 200. That's not worth it. You know, so if we can get it so they just have the supplies that are essential, we're helping them out. Every few $100s that you save for students is helping them out. And if they choose to major in art or chemistry and they need goggles and a lab book, or math and they need a calculator, or business or accounting and economics, they all need a calculator for those. It's still a bonus to get rid of the $200-300. And then it's called a zero textbook cost. But the way I do it is when I was teaching, I would still have a note in the scheduled classes that said, just so you know, you need a calculator. Here's one that will work for all of your math classes, all your math, and actually all your math, science, and business classes, so that students aren't buying 3 different ones. The other thing I wanted to bring up, because I've been chatting with several people, one of the things that I would suggest is to work with your colleagues on adoption and doing materials. And I'd also encourage you, if you end up creating materials, that you share them with other people. Please don't, everything will be copyrighted, but please don't make it so that there's no Creative Commons license on it. And Andy can later explain more another time what that is, but please share it with others. I have a lot of people who will say to me, oh, I don't think my stuff is so good, so I don't want to put it out there and have people criticize me, but it's good enough for my students. You need to share it so that we're not all reinventing the wheel on there. That's it.
Dan, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Actually, so first I just have a couple of comments, and then I do have some questions. I am converting over this semester to both my textbooks. In both my classes, I was using older editions of the textbook to keep the cost down, but it's gotten to the point where, like, it's okay. Barack Obama is no longer president. I probably should update my textbooks, you know, that type of thing. So I'm glad to be doing it. But first, I just want to make the comment. You know, I did apply for the program or fill out the application. And I really appreciate that, because your emails that came in, you would give a couple of links for some of the, getting started with OER. And that was very helpful. Just on that link, I was able to get over to, some websites that are from my discipline. I think I'm fortunate with communication studies because at least in California, the program for communication studies is very similar across the community colleges and even as the transfer level to the university. So we have a lot of consistency. So I think that's, something that's kind of added to my good fortune of finding OER sources. Overall. But so for instance, with one of the links that you gave and I received being in the program, I linked over and it was OER for communication studies. And when I linked on there, I needed to update a textbook for public speaking. And there were 5 different OER textbooks that are they're similar to very traditional type of textbook format styles, but they're online. So that was nice to be able to choose between 5, and one I think was a really natural fit for my course in public speaking. The intercultural communication course is the other, and that was not quite as easy as a fit. But again, from that same website from my discipline, there were 3 OER sources. And so I'm able to use one as my staple, and then I'm going to use a second one for, the readings that I feel like are lacking from the first. So that's just kind of a quick update. Again, in Google, I just put in OER, communication studies, textbooks, and I did find another couple links from that. So just kind of narrowing down your search in a good old-fashioned way. So anyway, it's totally doable. It's probably taken me about probably 3 hours for each course, so maybe a total of 6, to sift through and really kind of find, okay, I think I could make this work, and and it's useful and feasible for students, and it has the academic rigor or qualities that I want, all of that. So anyway, all that just to get to a question that I have. And that is, so I actually, the two textbooks that I found are both offered through LibreTexts. At least that's one of the sources that's offering this OER. I think the students can actually get to it from a couple of different websites besides LibreText. But anyway, so it's in the HTML format, you know, like you can go, what I like is that they offer it so that it's both a, there's one where you can do it as a PDF and it looks like the traditional textbook, table of contents, and you go from chapter to chapter. And then they break that down on the website so that it's more module style. It's the same duplicate information as the textbook format, but of course it's broken down, I think, the way that students are more used to getting information now, you know, going from website to website, link or page, that type of thing. My question is on the HTML though, how can I be sure that that is accessible for accommodations? You know, is the fact that it's in HTML format gonna work for most alternative formats? You know, I couldn't quite tell if, you know, if I haven't have any concerns with accommodation that way. Do you know if when a source is listed like that in a kind of an online digital format in HTML, is that pretty conducive for alternative formats?
So the LibreText is one of the best places you can go to incorporate material because they have people on the back end who are doing the accessibility work. So you know that the material is already accessible. And I know you mentioned the PDF. It's great to kind of offer that as an option to students, but I would not just stick the PDF into your Canvas course. And the reason for that is that PDFs are notoriously difficult in making those fully accessible. So it's great to offer it as an option, but really the best thing to do is to load it into your Canvas course. And I'm looking for it right now, but Jenna did a workshop on this where she walks you through the steps of downloading the file and then uploading it into Canvas. And what we recommend is creating a development shell and uploading it into that development shell. There you can do your edits and then putting it actually into your course. Now, if you decide, if you find the textbook and you realize that maybe there's in LibreText and you realize that there is there's a section that you just want to rewrite or rework, then we will need to, and I can help you with this, we'll want to request a faculty account for you in LibreText where you can go in and do the remixing within LibreText and then pull that remix into your course. And the text editor in LibreText is the exact same text editor that is used in Canvas. So it should be very familiar in that process. So yes, the HTML is really the better option than doing a PDF, but certainly if you want to offer your students a link to that PDF, if they would prefer to look at it in that format. The other great thing about LibreText is that they do have a print on demand option. So if a student says, you know what, I just really want the physical book, that's going to work for me and I'm willing to pay for it. I want to say it's like $12 for a black and white copy, or maybe it's even less than that, $8. And there's a link on each textbook that says, you know, request a printed copy.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it did very much so. And then what's nice is that when it's in that module format, really even each module page has a place where you can download and print. So I mean, they could literally just be printing as they go along if they wanted to. My second question real quickly, and I know that there's someone else, other people have questions or comments, and that is that one of the things with the program is that you have the Canvas course for the, you know, for the free textbooks. We're supposed to, there's 4 modules with quizzes. So is there a deadline or a due date to complete those 4 modules?
There's not technically due dates. Really, the last module is the most important one because that's where you're telling me what you're using. And so it may be, I'm just using this textbook that's already out there and I'm reworking it, or I've created something completely new and this is the outline and I need help putting it into LibreText or some other place. Barbara and I had a conversation about this, and I've talked to a bit with Robert about this. Right now, I'm going to say you should probably go through all of those modules before you start working on your textbook, because it covers things like accessibility and Creative Commons licensing and how to understand what you're looking at, what it is that you can use. It shouldn't take that long to go through the course. There are 4 modules in there, and certainly if there's something that you already know, you could just skip that page and go on to the next page. But I think, yes, probably eventually we'll put a due date on that. Barbara, did you want to speak to that?
I do. I did want to speak to that. So I would just encourage creating your materials to be the last resort. And unless that's something that you love doing. Okay, it was a last resort for me when Sue and I wrote our first textbook, because we couldn't find any statistics books we liked. And so it was a last resort. Now, at the time, there wasn't OER. There was public domain, which was the only thing. Now, there's so much out there that for anybody, I would encourage you to find what you want. And then if you need to write, supplement the material. It's much easier. Or if you've decided that there's nothing you've seen and there's nothing out there that will work for your class, try to find some buddies to write with together. You're not going to have to split the $5,000, I'm sure. Right? The idea is to get all the students the service they need. And I put my email in the chat because one person asked me about an OER and I have to look it up. I also want to remind you that the librarians, Andy and the other librarians, they are your very, very best resource. Remember them on Valentine's Day, bring them candy. If you see them off campus, a bottle of wine, chocolates, anything, because they're the ones who know how to find everything. And that is one of the things Andy and I will be working on, is making sure that the repositories that I know about, she knows about. LibreText is mostly a compilation of outside open textbooks that have been put in, and then other people may have tweaked them or may not have tweaked them. But and the same thing with OpenStax. You don't go into OpenStax to create, but you can download and change it to how you want it. I mean, that's the beauty of the OER. But I definitely encourage you not to start with, okay, I'm going to write an open textbook. It takes too long. There's already so much stuff out there already. Some of the disciplines, the higher enrolled disciplines, are crazily done. Business, economics, accounting, child development and communications at CSU Channel Islands has all 4 years worth of courses open. Most of the STEM fields are done and are highly used. In fact, one of my former colleagues, Andrew Fracknoy from Foothill College, wrote with a NASA engineer, they wrote the astronomy book that OpenStax has, and that is now the #1 astronomy textbook used in the country, not just of open, commercial or non-commercial. And we found that our statistics book was either 3rd or 4th. It kept bouncing back and forth of statistics books used throughout the country, when even bringing in the commercial. But the point is that it's not perfect. If I were still teaching, I would be supplementing my own book with what's happening in the world, bringing in coronavirus, bringing in presidential elections and polling things that have happened recently. So those are why I would start with something. And then, I mean, you are the faculty, you're the discipline experts, you live the material, bring in something that's of interest to you, and that focus on writing that part. That's it.
Rubina, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just was curious about if you could clarify, like I heard the word deliverable, like what is kind of the expectation of the program? What are we committing to?
The deliverable might just be when you turn that thing in Canvas, you say, I've decided to use these 3 textbooks and I don't need any help changing or doing anything. I'm good to go. That might be the deliverable. Or it might be a case in which you have decided that you're creating a new resource for your class that is incorporating lots of different material. And so you've created an outline saying for module 1, I'm going to use this chapter from this book. And for module 2, I'm going to use this YouTube video and this TED Talk. And for module 3, on and on. But you would like it in a textbook format instead of just kind of creating that in Canvas. Either way, even if you're creating in Canvas, my team will help you to either, if you're putting it in LibreText or Canvas, Commons, or however you're going to present it, we would help you create that actual final product. But in some cases, like I have one adjunct faculty member in CIS who has already turned in her outline, but basically her outline is she has everything covered by using open educational resources that are already out there, and she doesn't need to remix or rework. She's already using something that's already created. So there's no additional support that she really needs from us. And in some cases too, it might be that there actually is no deliverable to share, except for you might, I would hope that you would communicate with others who are teaching that class. So if this might be like the case, I'm thinking of Brandy, who's in the human services and the social work area. We found an ebook in our EBSCO ebook collection that she is going to be able to use instead of the textbook she had been using. And so I hope that if anybody else were to teach that course, she would share that information with them so they would know this is what I've been using. And even though it's not technically open, it is freely available to our students, and it's going to cover the material that they need. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Hiram?
Yeah, I think you answered my question kind of got answered along the way. I did have one question for Dr. Bush, and that is, I assume that perhaps the bookstore will end up having more free space because of this. And I'm just wondering if I could lay claim or lay dibs on having a larger office in that space.
Yeah, I think the bookstore are going to have several issues about what it is that we're doing. I just said that we'll offset some of it by buying more potato chips and energy drinks. Offset the cost of the textbook. But yeah, they're probably going to have a lot more floor space.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that other people have brought that up as well. Like, honestly, I'm not concerned about Follett at all. They're going to do just fine if we convert to mostly free textbooks. And many colleges have experienced this already, where they just sell other things instead of textbooks. So let's not worry about them. Okay, Barbara has to get off, and it is actually 3 o'clock, which is technically the end of our presentation. I will stick around. I have a few questions that have come to me privately in chat that I'm trying to answer, and I'll stick around also if there are any other questions. And I started the recording a little bit late, but I think we got the bulk of the content recorded. So this will be up on the PD website, and it'll include the slides that I presented at the beginning. And then I have office hours pretty much every week. So you're always welcome to join me there or shoot me an email. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
See y'all. Excellent, Andy. Excellent.
Thank you.